Well, another good day to be alive. Thank you, Lord, for another beautiful day and an opportunity once again to share about drawing and being an artist. I wanted to speak a little bit about just the importance of artistic basics that you need to learn. I don't think these are things in my experience as an artist um, that are stressed enough. Because as you know, I the Lord has sustained me now lo these 69 years, and I will this year be 70. Thank God, uh, as the Lord has sustained me, and I've learned a lot of things. There's a lot of things I don't know, a lot of things I do know. But for those of you who are either young artists or getting started, who actually are listening to me, like I have no idea who's listening and who's not, but my heart is to share with you things that maybe will help you to grow as an artist. I've had the luck, or luck, maybe that's not a good term. I've had the opportunities and the experiences that I've had as a result of a lot of very very talented people who come ahead of me that I have learned from. And there's been a lot of good training that I got, a lot of teachers that I've had, and what I wanted to share, or what I'm desiring to share with you, particularly those of you who are young new artists, and I mean, this may even work for folks who are a little older who are interested in being an artist or have some artistic talent or tendencies. I just want to share some things that I hope will be of use to you. Um, Artistic training when I was coming up, from what I can see, has changed. And to give you some context here, so that you know that I'm just not just talking out of my head. When I started in the business as an artist was back in the mid to late 70s. Prior to that, I had art training at Georgia State University, at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm from. I had many great art teachers at Georgia State, really talented people. When I came out here to Los Angeles, I worked at Ralph Bakshi Studios. I met a lot of very talented artists there. I went on from there to Disney, got my basic training really at Disney Studios when a lot of the older animators were still alive, and I actually got to talk to them. There were a lot of very young, extremely talented artists that I worked with at Disney that I talked to and got to know. People like Glenn Keane, Randy Cartwright, John Musker. I got to meet Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, who, of course, wrote the Illusion of Life book. You probably know about that. There were some extremely talented artists that I was privileged to know. Dan Haskett, Bob McKnight, Lou Scarborough, um, Tom Cito, just a lot of very, very talented people. Jerry Reese, Randy Cartwright. I mentioned Randy Cartwright already. John Lasseter, who of course went on to work at Pixar, created Pixar. Really helped to create it. So I'm saying this because I want you to have a sense of my background, and I've taught at a lot of schools. I taught at the High Museum. I'm sorry, the High Museum, the Art Academy in San Francisco. While I was working for Disney, they would fly some of us up there to teach. I taught at a lot of smaller schools, Brandeis Art Institute, which doesn't exist anymore, but this was where I met Glenn Vilppu, who was also at Disney at the time, and he was teaching a class there. Fred Fixler and Glenn Vilppu had started this school, Brandeis Art Institute. I eventually went on to a little smaller school called Associates in Art. I ended up teaching at Otis College, Laguna College of Art. Um, well, and I've worked at almost all the studios at Disney, DreamWorks, um, Richard Williams. I got to, wow, man, Richard Williams was a real experience. Well, anyway, the reason that I'm mentioning all of this is not to press you or anything like that. That's not the point. The point is that I went through a period of training. I went through a period of learning, and I'm still as far as I'm concerned, still learning even now. I've been retired, of course, for the last 5 years, but I still teach, as you can see, and I still teach it, independently. And by the way, if you are interested in a class with me, I teach people one-on-one online. So if you are interested in a class one-on-one with me, I advise it. I try to make my classes inexpensive. My classes are generally $300 or less, depending on what you need. I teach animation, I teach character design, I teach a bunch of different storyboarding. My storyboard class is maybe the most expensive one. And my classes generally are anywhere from 10 weeks to 15 weeks, depending on what they are. Some of the classes are 3 hours long, some are two. My reason for teaching one-on-one is I believe that everybody learns at a different rate, which is obviously true. And that in order for you to get the most, or for me as a teacher to give you the most, is I have to get on your wavelength. When I teach one-on-one, I feel that I'm not that my student isn't missing out. There's something that when you're in a big classroom of people, you can learn a lot. It's not to say you can't, but I think you can certainly learn a lot more when you have a one-on-one scenario, because then I can give you my undivided attention. You can give me yours. And I get to know you, which is nice. But at the same time, I also see the places where you need more help. Or and there's questions that you could have that you don't feel bad about asking because it's just one-on-one. And then you get more out of it. I'm more interested in giving you the most out of it and giving you the most for the money that you spend with me. So if you are interested, by the way, like I said, feel free to contact me through my email, which is my name, Leonard Robinson at yahoo.com. I'd be happy to give you information. It's really pretty reasonable priced classes, and we schedule them based on your convenience. So it's not like I have a specific time for the classes. I make it work out for your schedule and mine. All right, well, having said all of that, I want to come back to my original thought, was that what I wanted to talk about today was that I really feel very strongly that when I look on YouTube and I look at the various training and I look at the various things that artists are doing, what I don't see stressed is I don't see basics stressed. I don't see the understanding of learning how to draw and develop and create and develop yourself as an artist from the ground up. And there's a lot of reliance on photography. There's a lot of reliance on tracing. There's a lot of reliance from stealing from things. There's a lot of tricks. Okay, and once again, I'm not interested in this. It's not an issue of trying to put down any particular person online that's doing this. So I'm not saying it for that reason either. I'm more concerned about you, the artist, and you getting the most out of what you're doing and learning as an artist. And when I was coming up, there was a tremendous emphasis on life drawing, on learning anatomy, on learning perspective, on learning all these basic things. And it takes time for you to get good at these things. You don't just, tricks are not going to get you there. The only thing that's going to get you there is a clear understanding of what these things are. So, yeah. So anyway, and then when I first came into the animation business, for instance, the very difference between the way that I can see right now that the business was when I started and the way it is now is that, for one thing, most all of the animation studios that I went to work for at the time were run by artists. And when you went in and you got a job, you were being hired because artists were looking at your work. They were able to see your potential. They were able to see what you could actually do. Today, I know today they have all these recruitment departments, and I can honestly tell you that I don't think it's a good idea, because a lot of these folks who work in recruitment are not even artists. and they test you because it's a very inept way of actually dealing with who artists really are. You all go to the great lengths of putting together portfolios and websites, and one has to ask the question, why in the world would you need to test somebody if they've got a website? Why would you need to test someone if they've got a portfolio? What did you spend all that time developing your portfolio and your website for if you're going to be tested anyway? And if you've got a lot of experience at already having done it, why are you being tested? So clearly something's wrong with the system if that exists. Now, once again, this is my only concern here is for you, the artist, to get the most out of whatever training you get. And all I'm doing is sharing with you. I'm sharing, number one, of course, an objective viewpoint. That's me. You can agree with it or disagree with it. I'm not. This is not an issue of trying to, debunk things. I'm interested in you, the artist, being the best you can be. Now, some of you are talented who are watching me. You already have drawing skills. God has blessed you with a certain ability to draw and create, as He did me. When I was born with an innate talent as an artist. But some people are observant. Some people have an interest in art, and they have the capacity. And you can learn these things. You can develop yourself as an artist. There is a book out there which I was actually quite amazed by. When I was at Disney, there was a book, and you probably have heard of this book, called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And the lady who wrote the book, I believe her name was Betty Edwards, actually came to the studio, and she explained the process by which she trained people who actually did not have an innate art ability. She taught them how to copy things, and she taught them how to perceive things, how the brain will allow you to perceive and imitate. And it was very fascinating. So I am of the opinion that you can learn art techniques and you can develop yourself as an artist and become quite good if you're willing to put in the work that it takes to do that. So, anyways, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Well, not about drawing on the right side of the brain, but I wanted to talk about this whole thing of getting the art training. Because, see, what happens is if you try to shortcut your way around something, then what ends up happening is you don't, these basics that you don't have, you're at a handicap. If you know what the basics are, if you got a pretty good understanding of anatomy, you've done some life drawing, and you know a little bit about the form, the figure, and everything, then it gives you an advantage. Then you're able to create and draw things with a lot of, what's the word, confidence. You have the confidence because you know that what you're doing, you have a command of it, you know. If I'm going to draw, a character or whatever, depending on, what I have learned as an artist will give me either a certain amount of an advantage. Am I going to get that right? Is it going to look right? Or is it going to look amateurish? And I'd have to say, well, some of what I'm going to do has to be based in some knowledge that I've had. What was that? What is that knowledge? What can I do as an artist? What are my capabilities? You know, because what you're actually able to accomplish as an artist is only going to be reflected by the amount of time that you've spent learning certain things and getting those things under your belt to a degree where you feel confident that you can do them. And I remember the very first time I saw an artist working on something, creating something. I thought to myself, wow, it's almost as though it looks like they're tracing something that isn't even on the page. And I always thought, like, wow, that's really cool. I wish I could do that. And I realized that the only reason why they were able to do it was because they obviously must have spent some time, uh, you know, learning something that clearly I must not know, and I just think that it's good if you are going to, develop yourself as an artist. You want to be, you want to have your own language. See, one of the things too, another one of the things that's important is being able to invent and create things out of your own imagination. You know, if you're completely dependent upon a photograph that you've got to trace or somebody else's art that you've got to lift something from, then you're at a deficit already because everything that you're gonna do is gonna be based on something that um, somebody else did, or you have to then use reference or whatever to draw purely to draw. One of the areas that I've been doing on the online here is I've talked about drawing from your imagination, which is kind of what I'm doing. To be honest, I'm not even drawing from my imagination right now. I'm literally just making this up as I go. I don't even know. I didn't even know what I was going to do until I started doing it. And then now I got something. But see, the point is that I wanted to make here is that this is where you want to be as an artist. You want to be able to create something out of nothing yourself, out of your own mind, out of your own head. That gives you the advantage then of being completely creative and not relying upon anything but what's in here. That's what's important to you as an artist. Uh, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use stuff that exists already. And you look at AI, for instance. What does AI do? AI lives from everything that exists. It does. It'll do what you tell it to do, but it doesn't really invent anything, does it? And a lot of times, the reason why you see the mistakes in AI, I think, is because all it can do is extrapolate from what exists, and whatever it's doing, it clearly it doesn't understand what you're asking it, and so it gets things muddled. I think this is why sometimes you see characters with two legs or not enough fingers on one hand or not enough toes or whatever, and you got to go back and fix it. Oh, so and it artistically, you know, you can grab something and trace over it. You can get a photograph and once again, and I'm not talking about artists who use photographs as a reference to draw or paint. I'm not talking about that. Those are people who usually, the good ones are usually ones who already know how to draw. And even a lot of the great artists, Norman Rockwell, for instance, was a tremendous artist. And he used photographs, but he set up his own photographs and he got the kind of people that he wanted to paint and draw. He still had to paint and draw them. Sometimes he would photograph them because it made it easier. He was, it's easier to paint or work from a photograph than to try to have an artist just stand still and pose for him. I'm sure he probably did that too sometimes. Um, and yeah, you can work over a photograph, of course, but I think you're better off learning the basics of anatomy and stuff before you start tracing a photograph, because you can then end up tracing something the wrong way, and it can look like you traced a photograph. Um, when I first started to work in this business, for instance, I worked at Ralph Bakshi Studios, and we did the Lord of the Rings movie, the animated version of it, and everything was drawn. Well, when we first started, or when Ralph first started the film, initially it was being done by completely drawing and animating it from scratch, and so there was in fact an entire sequence I remember quite distinctly that had been animated, that was all traditionally animated. And what happened was is that at one point when he was pitching the idea to the various distribution companies, he had a sequence created. Frodo, the main character, was being chased by these ring wraiths, and so what he did was he actually got actors and filmed it live action to give it more realism, which made perfect sense. And it was so well received that Ralph decided to shoot the entire movie that way, which was a smart idea. And one of the things that I realized as I'm a young guy coming into this, I didn't really know a lot. Everything was new to me. Working over the photographs taught me a lot of things, but it also made me realize that if I didn't have some knowledge about anatomy or you know structural design or whatever, that I would just purely be tracing a photograph. But if I could reinterpret the photograph as a character, and I worked with some really, really talented people who did that, who knew how to do it, or were much better at it than me. Dale Baird, God rest his soul, was one of the first Disney animators that I met that worked for Ralph Bakshi, and I was working with him at one point, and I learned some things about what I'm talking about. Reinterpreting a photograph as a character. But I think that requires artistic knowledge, and it requires that you already know something about anatomy. You already have taken anatomy. You've already done life drawing. So, so basically, what I'm getting at here is I really want to convey the importance of getting artistic basics under your belt. So, and obviously, I'm not gonna. This class, my talk here is not so much to, uh, it's not something I can just give you in one class, or even really in a series of classes. However, I think I will, talk about it and do little illustrations here and there. I just wanted to point this out. Um, there are many, many books and many, many ways to get the knowledge. One of the things I guess I would say at the outset here is that I would highly encourage all of you, anyone who's interested, for instance, that's listening to me, to take some life drawing classes. Go to a class, go somewhere where you can draw a model, a live model. And even better, go to a class where there's an instructor, because an instructor will at least guide you as to what you need to be looking for. Um, so I would highly recommend that. And there you can find instructors all over the place. Um, if you are in the animation union, you probably have heard of Carl Nass. Carl Nass is an excellent artist himself, and he's a bit of an instructor in his classes. His classes generally, he will explain things and kind of help you. And I believe he does have specific classes where I think he does talk about anatomy very specifically. I've never taken any of his classes where he's talking specific, but I have been in drawing sessions with him where he's had models, and usually the people that are in the class are already seasoned artists. So I've been in that experience, and he's a great guy too, by the way. I would highly recommend you take one of his classes. But if you're in a community college and they have classes, or if you're any of the great universities around here in Los Angeles, or wherever you happen to be in the world, I'm sure you could find a place where there are live drawing classes. That is a good place to start, especially if you already have some art skill and some art development. Just you know, it's a good thing to get started in that direction, um, because it'll strengthen your work tremendously, and it'll get you you'll get the knowledge and the confidence. See, because that's another thing that's important is you need confidence as an artist to be able to do the job and do it well. And you can't do the job um, if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so I will get off of my soapbox for the moment. But like I said, I've done this for your benefit, those of you to whom it benefits. As Jesus would say, he who has an ear, let him hear. um, so because I would like to see every young artist, especially, be the best you can be, and you can't leap over certain things. It's important that you take the time to get the knowledge that you need to get. That will always make you stronger and better. All right. Well, I will see you again in future recordings and videos. Have a beautiful day, and don't forget, Jesus is Lord.